Erika, the wife of Charlie Kirk, was seen crying at his grave, her hands shaking as tears streamed down her face. But what happened next left witnesses stunned. Something so unexpected, it turned heartbreak into one of the most shocking moments no one can forget. When Erika arrived at the cemetery, there was no media entourage, no prepared speech, no grand gesture. It was just her, standing in front of the cold stone with Charlie's name carved into it, her eyes red and her face pale. At first, it seemed like the kind of quiet mourning moment that families keep to themselves. But witnesses quickly noticed this wasn't ordinary grief. Erika's entire body shook as she fell to her knees, clutching the ground, almost as if she was begging for answers from someone who couldn't respond. The silence was heavy, broken only by her sobs, and for those who saw it, the emotion was raw, almost unbearable to watch. Some said it looked like she had been carrying secrets too heavy to bear, and that this grave wasn't just a place of loss, it was the center of something much bigger. And what followed only deepened the mystery. To understand why this moment shook so many people, you need to know who Charlie Kirk really was. For years, he built his name as one of the most outspoken and controversial conservative voices in America. He created headlines, clashed with critics, and built an audience that saw him as both a fearless truth teller and a lightning rod for controversy. Every move he made was scrutinized, every word either praised or attacked. But behind the speeches, debates, and political battles was a private man with a family that often stayed out of the spotlight. Erika rarely appeared in public, almost never gave interviews, and lived in the shadow of Charlie's massive platform. Yet here she was, in the most vulnerable moment of her life, breaking that silence in front of the world. And people couldn't help but wonder, was she crying only for her husband? Or was there something much deeper behind those tears? For years, Erika Kirk lived in the shadows of her husband's towering presence in the political world. Charlie's voice was everywhere on television, at rallies, across social media, but Erika's was almost never heard. To many, she was the quiet partner, the one who stood behind him in photographs but rarely stepped into the spotlight herself. And yet, those who paid attention knew there was more to her story. Friends described her as deeply private, a woman who carried the burden of public scrutiny without ever asking for it. Every attack on Charlie, every controversy that made headlines, also landed at her doorstep. While Charlie thrived in confrontation, Erika endured it silently. The whispers about their marriage, the constant speculation about their family life, the pressure of being tied to someone so polarizing, it all added weight to her shoulders. And though she rarely responded, insiders hinted that Erika often struggled with the loneliness that comes from being tied to a man constantly in the public crossfire. So when she was seen at the grave, breaking down in front of the world, it wasn't just the loss of a husband people were witnessing, it was the collapse of years of bottled up emotion, the kind of grief that carries more than one meaning. Some say her tears weren't only for Charlie's absence, they were also for the sacrifices she had made, the privacy she had lost, and the heavy silence she had been forced to keep. But just when it seemed like this was simply a painful, private tragedy spilling into public view, something happened that turned the story upside down. Something so startling that those who saw it could hardly believe their own eyes. Witnesses say the air shifted in that graveyard. Erika's sobs grew quieter, her breathing ragged, and then something happened that no one expected. As she lifted her head, her eyes locked on the headstone, and instead of despair, her face seemed to change. Some swear she smiled through the tears, as if she had just felt something no one else could see. A few nearby whispered that she whispered Charlie's name, not in mourning, but in relief. And then, unbelievably, she pulled out a folded letter from her coat pocket. No one knows exactly what was written inside, but those close to the family claimed Erika had been keeping it hidden for years, a private message Charlie left for her, a note of reassurance, love, and faith. In that moment, it wasn't just a widow crying over loss. It was a woman rediscovering strength, holding on to a final piece of her husband that the world had never seen. The scene shocked everyone. Strangers stood frozen. Some called it divine intervention, others a simple act of closure. But to those who saw it, it felt like something more like the grave had given back a piece of Charlie, even if only for a fleeting second. And from that moment forward, nothing about Erika's grief seemed ordinary again. Within hours of Erika's emotional scene at the grave, whispers turned into headlines. Photos spread online, blurry videos surfaced, and soon social media was flooded with reactions. Some people saw her breakdown as heartbreaking proof of true love, a raw display of pain that no one could fake. Others, however, began speculating, was the letter real or was it staged? Was this a private moment that accidentally slipped into the public eye, or had it been orchestrated to send a message? Twitter threads dissected every detail. The way Erika clutched the letter, the expression on her face, even the sudden shift from sobbing to what some swore looked like relief. TikTok edits went viral, framing her as both a tragic figure and an icon of strength. Supporters rushed to defend her, insisting this was genuine grief. Critics twisted it into conspiracy theories, suggesting that the incredible moment was a performance tied to Charlie's larger-than-life political legacy. What was supposed to be a quiet act of mourning had turned into a spectacle, a cultural storm that nobody, least of all Erika, had asked for. But as the online fire grew hotter, so did the questions about what really happened at that gravesite. And just when people thought they had the answers, the story took an even stranger turn. As the frenzy raged online, new details began to emerge that made Erika's moment at the grave even more puzzling. A close friend of the family claimed that the letter Erika held wasn't recent at all. It had been written years earlier, sealed and saved for a time when Charlie feared he might never return from one of his countless trips. That alone was enough to send shockwaves, but what really stunned people was what witnesses say, Erika whispered as she clutched it to her chest. He knew. Those two words spread like wildfire. What did she mean? Did Charlie know something about his own future? Was it a prediction, a warning, or a message meant only for her? Speculation turned wild. Some believed it was a sign of his deep faith, that he had left her a spiritual anchor for the darkest moment of her life. Others took it further, suggesting he foresaw the chaos that would surround his name long after he was gone. Whatever the truth was, Erika's grief no longer looked like ordinary sorrow. It looked like she was carrying the weight of something bigger, a secret that no one else had the power to reveal. And for many watching, this wasn't just a private tragedy anymore. It had become a story that blurred the line between heartbreak and destiny. But as the mystery grew, so did the rumors, and what people started saying next made the entire situation spiral even further out of control. As Erika's graveyard moment continued to dominate headlines, the rumors only grew louder. Some people insisted the letter she held proved that Charlie had left behind far more than words, that he had hidden truths the public was never meant to see. Conspiracy threads exploded online, suggesting everything from secret political messages to coded predictions about the future of his movement. Others speculated it was nothing more than a love letter, private words between a husband and wife that the world had twisted into something sensational. But the theories didn't stop there. A few voices began to ask whether Charlie's grave itself was symbolic, pointing to inconsistencies in public records, questioning why certain details about his resting place seemed deliberately concealed. It was as if every unanswered question about his career, his controversies, and now his personal life all collided in this one haunting scene. Meanwhile, Erika stayed silent. She didn't speak to the media, didn't release a statement, didn't even address the storm that was building around her. And that silence only fueled the speculation more. Was she protecting his legacy? Was she hiding the truth? Or was she simply trying to survive a moment of grief that the world had turned into a circus? One thing was certain. Whatever the truth behind Erika's tears, it had transformed her from a quiet figure in the background into the centerpiece of a mystery that refused to fade. And the aftermath of that moment would only add another layer to Charlie Kirk's already complicated legacy. Erika's tears at Charlie Kirk's grave weren't just about loss. They were about years of silence, the heavy cost of a public life, and the shocking moment that left the world asking more questions than it answered. Was it simply grief, or something greater? Was it a woman finally breaking under the weight of tragedy, or was it the uncovering of a truth only she could carry? Whatever it was, it reminded everyone watching that sometimes the most powerful stories aren't shouted from podiums or broadcast on television. They unfold quietly, in the silence of a graveyard, where one cry can echo louder than any speech.